If you're a finger drummer and you're in the market for a new Launchpad and you want the one with the most sensitive, the most playable, the most dynamic pads, should you get a Launchpad X or a Launchpad Pro, or does it not make that much of a difference? Let's go find out. The quest for groove. I did a bunch of videos about the Launchpad X last year. I was very excited about it. I thought the pads were great, and I obviously stated that in multiple videos. But something I found out shortly after by getting a lot of responses and comments from users is that a lot of them agreed with me, but some of them, for example, complained about double note triggering, something that I wasn't really bothered by or didn't really notice. And other people actually complained about that the pads weren't as sensitive as I said they were. So that sort of led me to believe that maybe there's something going on where one particular Launchpad X is not exactly 100% the same as another Launchpad X, right? So they have small differences between devices. So in order to check that, I actually got my hands on 3 Launchpad X's just for testing. And I also got my hands on 2 Launchpad Pros so that I could be a little bit more thorough in my advice and my findings. So let's jump in with the Launchpad X. I compared 3 Launchpad X's to one another, and I can confirm, yes, there are small differences between the 3 devices. They're small, but they are there. The Launchpad X that I talked about originally, so the first one that I got that I was so enthusiastic about, is the most sensitive of the 3 that I got. As a result, it also has the most double note triggering. Not that much in my case, but there is some. The other 2 didn't have any double note triggering as far as I could tell, but they responded a little bit less well. Like they responded a little bit less to the lightest touches, and I guess those 2 things are related to one another. Now, let me be very clear about the fact that none of the 3 Launchpad X's that I played was a bad device. If I compare any of those to, the other pad controllers, I would still consider any of the 3 Launchpad X's a great value for money device with some great pads, but there are differences, and I personally prefer the first one that I got. So the one that I was so super raving about, that one was the best one of the 3 personally. It was the most sensitive. It had some double note triggering, but the combination was the best overall package in my opinion. Then the second one that I got was the heaviest, no double note triggering, and then the third one was a little bit in between. And I can't imagine that third Launchpad X would have been the best choice for a lot of people who really don't want any double note triggering, but also don't mind that the pads are a little bit more heavy to play. So yeah, I don't know. None of them was actually particularly bad, but there are small differences, and you have to adjust the velocity curve in your drum software and maybe in the Launchpad to sort of get them working for you. I also noticed that this was the case for a lot of users. So somebody would complain, and then I would tell them, hey, maybe you can adjust the velocity curve, turn off aftertouch, stuff like that. And usually the response after that would be, yeah, I messed around with the velocity curves and now I'm happy with the device. So that's sort of the thing with the Launchpad X. They're a little bit different. I haven't played a bad device so far, but yeah, keep that in mind. Moving on to the Launchpad Pro. My general conclusion after testing 2 Launchpad Pros and comparing them to the Launchpad X's is that the Launchpad Pros seem to be a little bit more pro. The pads respond to very light touches. Some of the Launchpad X's do too, but the Pros are consistent in that. So some of the Launchpad X's were a little bit heavier to the touch, and the Pros were both very responsive to light touches. And at the same time, I couldn't get the Pros to produce a double or accidental note trigger. So that's a plus, right? Very light touches, and at the same time, no double note triggers for as far as I can tell. Obviously, maybe I should have gotten a 3rd Launchpad Pro and all of a sudden I would have noticed this issue. You never know, but I gotta draw the line somewhere. Hey everybody, this is Rob from the future who's editing the video, and I forgot to talk about the differences in dynamic range between the Launchpad X and the Launchpad Pro. What I can tell you is after testing, there is not really a difference. It really depends on the velocity curve that you select on your Launchpad and also the velocity curve that you create in your drum software. And whenever I compare 2 devices, sometimes I thought, okay, the Launchpad Pro has a little bit more dynamic range, and then I would play a Launchpad X and I was like, no, it doesn't. So it's really this super small difference that you cannot objectively pin down. Also not when looking at MIDI data. So dynamic range is more or less the same, except for the fact, of course, that the Launchpad Pro sometimes responds better to those softest hits, and therefore you have those softest hits in your palette. So my guess is if you have that extra 150 bucks to spend for the Pro, right now I would say, yeah, you should probably get a Launchpad Pro over a Launchpad X. Let's quickly talk about differences between devices, because I did notice something. In the beginning, I thought, okay, both the Pro devices are exactly the same. But when I adjusted the velocity curve on the device itself, there was a difference, because the hardest velocity curve, so the most difficult one to play, where you have to hit pretty hard to reach the top velocity level 127, that curve, actually one of the Launchpad Pros was reached 127 when I would give it a firm solid tap, and the other one would never reach 127. It would just go up to 115 or something. But when selecting the medium velocity curve, the one that I prefer and the one that most people prefer, I couldn't discern any difference between the two devices. But with that heavier velocity curve, there was a difference, and one of the two was clearly the winner, because it just had that full dynamic range from 0 to 127, and the other one actually just capped somewhere at 115, and I had to adjust my drum software in order to make that thing work. It was possible, and after adjusting, again, the difference was pretty small, but I think it's important to let you guys know, like, okay, these devices are not 100% one and the same, and even though it's a small difference, I don't know what other small difference there might be if you test 1,000 of these devices, right? Overall, I would say both my Launchpad Pros were a little bit better than the 3 Launchpad X's that I tested. If I had to buy one right now, I would for sure get a Launchpad Pro. One thing I can tell you about the Launchpad Pro that I don't like as much as compared to the Launchpad X is this bottom row of buttons, because I noticed that I accidentally hit them with my thumb when I'm drumming. I put my kick drums on this bottom row, and then before you know it, you hit this one and you switch pad banks, and then your drum kit's gone. So I have a solution for this. I'm gonna move my drum kit up one row, because there's more than enough room up top here, usually. So it's gonna be an easy fix, but yeah, that's something I actually prefer about the Launchpad X. So just let me show you. As you can see, there's just nothing here. That's better, actually. If you're looking for a more general recommendation on what pad controller to buy, so not just launch pads, but any pad controller, I regularly do videos giving the most up-to-date advice on that topic. The latest video will appear over here. I also have a blog post that I keep updated. Link to that in the comments and the description below. Hope you enjoyed this video, and hope to see you soon in another one.